course, at 11 o'clock, you're listening to Sun, and Sun is here at Stream, KUHSdenver.com. Coming to you live every Friday on, I got a face made for radio, I have to admit to you right up front, but we have our video images as well, coming to all of you out there across the country and across, actually the world nowadays. We've got a great signal here streaming our thoughts about performance and being a better performer. In this case, we're taking it right to the edge of the definition of that because we're going to talk about movies. And the theater that I love to participate watching films at is the C Film Center, downtown Chicago. Look, I'm thinking through all my past and my history. It's Denver, for crying out loud. I'm from Chicago, but Denver. And over my right shoulder is Keith Garcia, the artistic director at the C Film Center. And we're going to welcome Keith. Good morning, Keith. Glad to have you with me.
Hello, hello, hello. Happy to be here.
And I always love the setting, the framing that Keith puts in his pictures and his approach, because just look at that. You got the records and the colors. I love that. He sets it up for me. I don't have to do anything up front in pre-show arrangements to say, could you put some curtains across the back of that wall for me? I've done that before. People really don't know how to do Zoom yet. They're still figuring it out. But welcome, Keith. Thank you for being here. My first question for you was what we talked about pre-show, about the films that are being shown the next couple of weeks in advance to the Denver Film Festival have a great history. But is there one in particular that you want to direct people to make sure that they take a look at?
Well, firstly, I'd love people to land on our virtual cinema page, because virtual cinema is really what we're doing right now in this weird year. Is putting movies on the internet for people to watch, and it also helps to support us. We do get a cut of tickets, quote-unquote ticket sales, for viewing these films, and it's the way that we're kind of rolling along still, because the C Film Center is currently still temporarily closed while the country and the world sort of sorts out some things. But right now, we have an ebb and flow of anywhere from 5 to 20 films on the platform sometimes. And right now, as we're leading into the Denver Film Festival coming up here on October 22nd, we sort of slimmed down our rankings to a nice, sizable 6 films that are definitely worth your attention, all 6 of them. The films make a great example of trying out the virtual platform so that you can make sure that it will work with your TV or any way that you view movies, be it your laptop, your phone, TV most preferably for most people, especially if you're trying to recreate a big screen experience watching this stuff. But if there's one to stick out of these 6, and just rolling the titles of what we have a film called 12-Hour Shift, another film called Aggie, another film called Chuck Berry, the original King Rock and Roll, a film called My Wild Heart, Oliver Sacks' His Own Life, and the film that I think is definitely not to be missed from this list is a film called Native Son, which originally, this is a new restoration of a film from 1951, based on a novel by Richard Wright. The film is a film noir that centers around a black man who is played by the author himself, Richard Wright, and it puts him in a very precarious, film noir, dark, sinister situation. And the book itself was controversial at the time, and the film itself, especially for 1951 with a black lead, was very controversial at the time. And the film was kind of edited weird, censored a little bit in places, but now, all this time later, has been restored to a really gorgeous black and white presentation, and the story itself couldn't be more relevant either for our time right now. So definitely worth a look as Native Son and that new restoration.
Well, and Keith, you made some really good points about the virtual situation we find ourselves in, and if, as you pointed out as well, if people can replicate their theater setting at their own home, whatever that might look like. And for some, it's a phone, it's a smartphone. For others, it's their big screen and bringing the signal through there. C Film Center has done a great job of accommodating the nuances of needs for seeing a film at home in a virtual sense. Is it denverfilm.org that they would go to purchase their virtual ticket?
Correct. Denverfilm.org is our main channel that'll take you to everything that we're doing, period. In another sense, if you wanted to jump right to the platform page, it's watch.eventive.org / Denver Film, but that gets a little bit, gotta write that down. Denverfilm.org, and then on that homepage is a little tab that says virtual cinema, and that'll lead you right to where you want to be.
Yeah, you bring up something that's on my mind lately about the virtual world in any genre, whether it's a cinema or business, and the word I wrap around any of those possibilities is simplicity. User-friendly. And I think, given what we have as choices, you and the C Film Center have done a good job of making it as user-friendly as the technology will allow us to do. So check that out, everybody, denverfilm.org, and take a look at any one of those 6 films, but the recommendation of Native Son is right from Keith Garcia, the artistic director at the C Film Center. So with that being said then, Keith, the future, virtual is not going away. I believe that. Are you similar in your belief? It's going to stay?
It's interesting. Virtual, at least as we understand it right now, this capacity of being able to present films via a specific platform, working with film distributors, sometimes bringing in filmmakers and guest lecturers and all that stuff to make an event experience is something that's been, people have been working on it for a while in the background. And to that point, when the pandemic started, when the quarantine started, and we had to temporarily close the C Film Center, it only took about 4 days until we were up with a specific experiment with virtual cinema, which wasn't the one we're at right now. The one we're at right now is we run our own platform. We're programming stuff into it. We handle the ticketing and all this stuff. Previously, when the quarantine started, we worked with some distributors who had put their films on other platforms, and though this was very handy and we were able to share box office with them and get a lot of views during that time as people were really forced to stay at home and find something to do, it became a little complicated in that there were so many platforms that had different films that, with these distributors, that we were leading people to, and they had to log in here on this one and log in here separate on this one. And that still is a fashion that some theaters are working with, but we just decided, especially as we were gearing up, knowing we were gearing up for the Denver Film Festival, which is coming up, that we were going to have to be virtual, most likely, back in March. We just decided that one platform that we could handle ourselves would be best. And we started doing this single platform back at the end of June, and it's been great. And I've seen nothing but the potential that this virtual cinema has post-pandemic, post-quarantine, as definitely a added bonus, as it were, to being able to get back into theaters. We can certainly do theaters again and want to and need to, but having this this other ability to have this almost infinite other screen that we could have is fantastic. And something that I learned a lot, and we learned a lot, all of us, over this time, not just on virtual cinema, but other places that had to adapt, is accessibility is a thing that maybe we weren't really aware of so much, but doing something like virtual cinema has pointed out just how this realm makes film much more accessible for people who maybe have never been able to travel to the C Film Center and wanted to support us, or people who in general live in Denver can't leave their home very easily. We can bring them a film experience without them having to leave. so many aspects that accessibility can relate to that we're definitely embracing and looking at as a future to tie into the C Film Center once it does reopen.
So Keith, you make a great point about accessibility. And I'm wondering if in your experience, there's some generational differences. Like for me, for example, I love the feeling of the theater, and I'm looking forward to get back to that smell of the popcorn, the seats, my feet sticking to the floor, all of those experiences. But that's not necessarily in every generation. Generations that love their smartphone and will sit and watch sitcoms on a smartphone on a bus or a train or even sitting on the curb in a bench in a park. Those are audiences, to your point, that have an extended screen, that infinite screen, as you mentioned. Do you think is that why another reason why virtual is going to stick around, because there's generational differences as to where technology fits in their life?
A little bit of that, but also I think technology has created choices for people into how they view their entertainment. And it really is just down to each individual person. I mean, like you said, there's aspects of the in-person theater experience that are, though in particular, like you were just saying, feet sticking to the floor, smell of popcorn, all that. That's not everyone's experience. Some people don't like that, or really do like other aspects of things. But we all decide where our time goes in that. And also, and I know I have friends, and I guess I kind of do it myself a little bit, where I'll be like, well, this is a film I'm not going to see here. I'm going to go see it over here because I know their screen is bigger, or like they do this special thing in the theater. But then I also have my films, and I'll be like, well, I can watch that at home. That's fine. Like, or I don't like watching stuff on my phone unless it's like short. Just because of that aspect, but it's very handy for a bus ride, for a waiting room, for anything where I'm just like, you know what, let me pop in and watch. I have 20 minutes to kill.
Yeah.
Let me watch 20 minutes more of this thing, which a filmmaker would probably go crazy knowing that their 2-hour film is being watched in chunks on a phone.
You just turned my feature film into an episodic series.
Exactly, but ultimately, once you make a movie, you've made the movie, and you can have your super high standards for how it's going to be presented, like Christopher Nolan or any of those things.
Yeah.
But overall, what's most important is getting it into the eyes of your audience, and however they have the time, they have the ability to see it. That's what you got.
So Keith, you bring up a good point about experiential engagement with a film viewer now. So what has the C Film Center done to bring that experience to the viewer? But they're not going to be a butt in a seat. But they want to. Maybe they're going to stop by the theater. I've heard that you guys have done curbside service for things to kind of enhance the movie experience as much as you could. What are some examples of that you've done?
Well, I mean, this summer was the summer to try everything out. Like, we really had to learn how to adapt and pivot to this new world, as it were, this temporary new world. And, we ran the gamut of doing curbside pickup for popcorn and drinks and soda and stuff like that. We no longer do that at the moment just because it's a great idea. It actually served us very well. But as things started to change, we found other things to adapt to. One of those being private screenings at the Film Center, where you can play, you and 9 other people can get together for a very reasonable price and play a film of your choosing and get popcorn and soda, fresh popcorn and soda thrown in, additional drinks, etc., and have a private screening that played against the idea of what's keeping people out of theaters. What's keeping me out of theaters is the idea of going to a film screening with strangers.
Yeah.
And it's just due to the pandemic. Just knowing I don't know these people, I don't know their health, I don't know all of that. There's all these factors that then come into play that I'm like, well, this is just going to distract me the whole time I'm watching this movie, is worrying if one of these people is about to start coughing, or is asymptomatic and is just passing particles around that no amount of cleaning, which we do, we had to, obviously increase our cleaning ability and airflow and all that stuff. The science just doesn't point to a good time.
Yeah.
For commiserating with strangers again. But it is perfect for a family or a set of a pod of people who all know where they've been, what they've been tested at, all these different factors. And that's been actually really working for us incredibly. And we're very happy to still be able to offer private screenings for folks. But that's an adaptation that we did. And on top of that, having virtual cinema to enhance that too. Like, obviously getting the films on the platform and getting a great selection is one thing. The next step, which will happen after the Denver Film Festival, is we'll begin integrating film introductions into the movies, much like I used to do if you came to see a film in person, as I would talk for a minute or two beforehand. We're adding these elements slowly just to play with the technology and, of course, enhance things with post-film Q&As with filmmakers, lectures with experts and professionals and teachers, and just trying to, the only thing that's different is how you're watching it.
I like the fact that we're opening the door to those possibilities of the pod, this homogeneous unit of 10 that comes in, to the point where I felt I should start a business called Kibbutz Cinema. bring in the tribes. Okay, your tribe can come in and do
exactly
and do the thing. And even though that's kind of tongue in cheek and making it lighthearted, there's the serious nature that you mentioned about by opening it up just freely to anybody that comes in. We're still not secure yet. We're still not healthy enough to allow that to happen. But the technology, talk to me a little bit about the what ifs and the adaptability of technology when you think about, okay, we've got this group of people coming into the theater, or it's the virtual plus that, and we're gonna show a film that hasn't really been seen all that widely, and the director can come in through Zoom. Can you do that thing with a C Film Center showing of a film? And I'm talking about outside of the festival, because I know the festival is going to try that kind of stuff.
Well, for a private screening, probably not. Just because, it's films that people can choose, and that we're finding that unless it's like a mainstream, very big title like Tenet or the few films that have been released in theaters in the last couple of months, people aren't really aware of taking a chance. So we haven't offered an ability for folks to see some films that they're very familiar with, or that have been in the zeitgeist for a while. Some of those filmmakers are incredibly hard to track down, and the notion that we'd just be doing it for one screening for 10 people it's really hard to grab a director for that. But that aside, and that's just in reference to the private screenings at the sea, back on virtual cinema is, the plan is to show these films to as many eyes we can get in front of it, and even on like a nationwide scale. It's not specifically limited to Colorado. A couple of films we may have to geo-block to the state, which, like the film festival, will have some of those films. But the ability to share a film with someone, well, actually, we did the Cinema Q Film Festival about 2 weeks ago, which is our LGBTQ film festival.
Yep.
And I was pushing that on Instagram, and one of my followers messaged me and was like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be able to watch some films and support you ever since I moved to China."
Oh, gee.
And they technology was not perfect, so they had measures that they could still represent that they were in the U.S. for these films. It's not a perfect system if people really want to keep IP addresses in a certain way. But anyway, they watched the Cinema Q selections in China, and they're like, "I'm so happy to support you guys from here and be able to watch movies again." And in their eyes, it was as simple as that. They were supporting us, getting to watch interesting and carefully curated films, the way that they were used to watch them when they lived in Denver, but now they're able to do it from thousands of miles away in a foreign country.
In a moment, we're going to talk about content and film curation, but I'm going to take a brief pause and again say to everybody, good morning. I'm glad you're here with us today at 360 Performance. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman, every Friday, streaming here at KUHS Denver. We bring you performance issues, and we're taking the ultimate swing at it today when we talk about cinema and the theater experience and performing by delivering films now in a virtual way. But before I get back to Keith, let me just mention to you that one of my colleagues out there in Oregon, and thankfully they're not crispy critters yet, they survived the fires. It's Empower. Go to empowerbodycare.com and use my code 360performance and check out some of their spa products that are CBD based, very, very popular all across the country. I hope you'll take advantage of that. And because you use the code 360performance, you'll get a discount, get a wonderful discount. My treat to you for some award-winning CBD spa products. It's bath salts, lotions, oils, and I think they've got some, bath salts, oils, lotions. I think that's it. That's enough. Go check it out. EmpowerBodyCare.com and use my code 360performance. Back with Keith Garcia. He's the artistic director at the C Film Center down on Colfax in downtown Denver. And Keith, I want to talk about content. Where are we going to get the next film? Who are they producing? I'm hearing that documentarians are actively producing product, but feature films in the non-documentary categories are having difficulty because they're studio-based in many times, or they've got to, get their editor, their music, and it's as you know, it's a complicated process as a filmmaker yourself. So where's the content going to come from, and when will it be here?
Well, as Jurassic Park kind of taught us all, life finds a way. And the movie industry itself has definitely done this, and we're kind of walking in a few different worlds of understanding. When it comes to a place like ours, like the C Film Center, we're never playing the super big screen stuff, the Tenants and the Wonder Womans and the any Marvel film or those things. Not that we were object to them, but there's enough theaters that are playing that our eye and our focus was on art house, foreign, repertory classics, really expanding the power of film in other ways and perhaps a little more niche in some aspects, but at the same time our goal was to really push forward films that didn't really have massive budgets, massive marketing budgets, and be able to bring them to an audience that would understand their thought-provoking, more intense, more low-budget nature in some cases. We played some pretty high-budget films too as well.
Yeah.
But so when it comes to the world of theaters, 90% of the theaters that are out there, and these are the ones that make the headlines, are we all had to close. March 16th, I think, was our last day that we were in operation, and many other theaters were too. And as cities and states began reopening again, they began looking at reopening theaters, and some theaters have been open around the country since May, I think, late May, very early June. Denver didn't get the go-ahead until July.
Yeah.
But most theaters didn't open up again until the next big film for them, which, mind you, we were looking at Tenet as well. We had the opportunity to also play Tenet and get reopened. But there's so many factors that people don't see when they hear these articles about movie theaters opening, or just hear that their theater opened, down the street, that Regal and AMC and Alamo and all these places opened up. Is that there's a tremendous amount of overhead that comes into opening a theater. You have floor staff, you have management, you have facilities of a building, you have all these things that when you're working on a limited capacity, which is what everyone, that's the one common ground that everyone has to work with is having these limited capacities in your theaters for safety, and having to add extra measures like social distancing, double cleanliness, or even triple in some cases. All these facets become very expensive, and when you look at the bottom line of playing a movie and what cut the exhibitor, which is the theater, is going to get in the end, it doesn't make sense. Especially when you don't have, in a mainstream world, you don't have the product coming out. Tenet kept getting pushed, and finally opened, and then we discovered that it wasn't the savior that everyone thought it was going to be for the movie theater industry, for various reasons. But a lot of it, people just not trusting going to the theater again, which it's really hard to, it's a hard thing to demand support that way. To be like, please support your movie theater is akin to just saying, well, can you put aside your own health and worries in support of movie theater?
Come to our theater when it's unhealthy.
Exactly. And, when we made the decision to kind of keep staying with not reopening, we had to think, but how are we engaging our audience? And that's what's most important to us, is our whole bottom line is showing film and presenting it. Well, how are we going to do that? Virtual cinema was obviously something we started from the get-go of quarantine. This morphed into, as we were looking at a summer where we were just going to keep pushing our opening date back, to working with Denver Arts and Venues on the Film on the Rocks Drive-In, which was incredibly successful.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience
for us at Red Rocks. Just all that stuff together, we just really had to learn to adapt. And, even our big film festival, Denver Film Festival, which normally has, over 200 films and covers, 2 or 3 different venues, and we get like 50,000 people that come every year and watch movies. How do we siphon that down into a safe, engaging, and wonderful experience? And our platform is what it is this year. Other film festivals have also adapted to this platform. And, we have fewer movies. We have probably about 70 features, and maybe the number just kind of escapes me, but maybe like 75 short films. That still covers the gamut of everything that we've been able to bring during the Denver Film Festival, which is just world cinema, documentary experiences with filmmakers. We have a ton of filmmakers that are doing Q&As for the films that'll be attached to all of them, so that people can have that experience going in.
So Keith, when you look at that connection between the art house cinema and the connection to their virtual platform, whichever one they might use. In your case, it's Eventive is your platform that you're using. Does that open the possibilities of you using getting a hold of a bigger budget film? Because your footprint can be big enough to satisfy that audience. With the failure of Regal in the Cineworld chain of theaters, and Batman and 007. The movies,
rolled back.
Yeah, they rolled all that back because there was a difficulty getting it into the theater to get the kind of book they needed to support the budget of that film. But now, as virtual continues to grow, doesn't it seem realistic or possible that the art house could actually simulate a footprint in a virtual way to satisfy the demand of a big budget film?
Yes. And it is something too that we're definitely working with some of our distributor friends on their films, and the ones that are a little bit bigger in terms of distributors. Warner Brothers, which does Tenet, I don't think that they're ever going to flow into the idea of virtual cinema. A lot of these bigger ones, like Universal, actually, they played with it in regards to video on demand, which is a a whole other ball of wax. Although it shares some DNA with virtual cinema. But like this, during quarantine, they were able to release Trolls World Tour to tremendous success.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's a family film, and families were looking for something for their kids, and this was an easy, like, cool, we will get that movie, and the family will watch it, the kids will watch it a bunch of times, and great. But there's been experiments with other films like Mulan, which Disney Plus did by releasing on their which Disney did by releasing on Disney Plus, albeit for an additional fee that seemed sort of exorbitant to many people.
Well, Disney got greedy, Keith. Disney got greedy.
Exactly. And in the end, too, the film proved to be problematic, as we discovered, both in its production and also in its final execution, that maybe it wasn't that they were experimenting so much as they were finding a safe spot to dump the movie. And see if they could reap some benefit on the way down.
Yeah, they experimented a little bit.
Exactly. Like, they kind of, like, had it been released in theaters with no problem, like we weren't in a pandemic, it would have been a gigantic hit, and then eventually people would have been like, yeah, but it wasn't very good. Versus now, it was like, well, they must have known it wasn't very good, which is why they were so eager to be like, we'll do virtual cinema for it.
Well, you know, I like your example of Mulan, because it builds to what we're talking about regarding an art house and virtual experience combined together. So imagine if Disney wasn't so greedy that they only wanted to distribute it through their Disney Plus platform, but they opened it up to theaters who had virtual connections, and knowing that the theater, the physical plant, wasn't going to be able to receive as many moviegoers, but when you add the virtual component and a release to many theaters who have the virtual component, I'm imagining that Disney could have had a premiere of Mulan to an audience just as big as if it were butts in chairs.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that.
No, they didn't. And one of the big key factors with the major distributors is sharing, which is really kind of what it is. A lot of them don't really want to share these ticket sales. Now, mind you, when they're releasing a film in theaters, it's about sharing. We get a portion of the theater that's playing the film gets a portion of the ticket sales, and the distributor gets the other half. Their half generally being more than what the theater gets.
Yeah.
For the major film releases.
Yeah.
And how that works on a digital scale is where I think a lot of them are like, no, thank you. We don't want to worry about that. Because there's other things, too, that get involved that are underneath that most people don't think about, which is streaming films requires fees. Like, every platform that hosts streaming charges a certain amount for bandwidth and for opening the film and all these various key factors. Like, we do it as well, but we keep that, like, the customer doesn't need to know that one aspect, and it's all in the payback to the distributor.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, this much, $1.80 of every ticket sale is going to go back to
Keith. I'm so glad you brought that up. I want to ask you this piece here. You mentioned the term distributor. Now, in traditional methods, if the theater had people able to sit in chairs, you've got a distributor that brings it to the C Film Center, and you say, yes, we want it, and that distributor is representing the production house. So production house says, distributor, you get this cut, you distribute it to the theaters you want, they get their cut, yada, yada, yada. What if the distributor wasn't in play anymore, and the production house comes directly to you because they can give you the deck for the theater, and they can give you a stream to the virtual piece, and there is no distributor in the middle? Is that looking like a possibility?
I mean, that's something we have done forever in person. We've taken many films direct from the filmmakers or the producers, In fact, on Virtual Cinema right now, opening today is a great film called My Wild Heart.
Yeah.
That was produced by the Bloomfield Film Project here in Colorado.
Yep.
And it's a lovely documentary about a family dealing with their mother's descent into Alzheimer's,
Yep.
and specifically the father, who is a really amazing wood sculptor. His own backstory, his own romance with his wife, and also his reaction through art to this Alzheimer's affection, and it's really lovely. And this is a film that came to us directly from the producers. They said, "Hey, we want to get this film out there. We think there's an audience, and we'd love your platform to be the place where people could start to watch this film." And it's a testing ground because they can take the film from after our run. They can decide, well, that was good enough. Let's talk to other film societies around the country and see where this can kind of go, either as being a benefit for the theaters, or they could decide to completely stay with us and make us the hub.
Yeah.
Where this film plays.
See, that's a great example, Keith, for a lot of reasons. One, it's a Colorado-based film. It's a documentary about a wonderful story. But even more important to our example, it's an example of the business possibilities going forward of a filmmaker, whether they represented from a studio or not, going directly to the distribution source, the theater, rather than have that librarian distributor doling out movies, because now the technology is a lot. Look, I've even had conversations with people that are talking about the James Bond movie the studio going directly to theaters, because they're concerned that the Regals of the world, the AMCs of the world, may not be in business when they want to release the film.
Right, and that is definitely something we're all looking at. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like the whole idea of like overhead costs and it just not being worth it. Like I am in a position where I get to see everyone's grosses around town.
Yep.
And just looking at the numbers, it just doesn't add up for me. How most of these theater chains, corporate chains, are eking by, because I just know on what our overhead is on a small scale, on having a theater that has 3 screens, that generally always has a very limited staff, what that is, and films that don't have $1 million weekends when they're released nationally. Our film is a lot more select, and the grosses vary wildly with the stuff that we play, but we do it knowing that we're going to make something back this way as a nonprofit, which is perhaps our saving grace. Is like we get to rely on grants and additional funds to kind of like take care of the bigger picture, so that we can focus on bringing really important smaller films that the major chains are never going to take a chance on, because to them the math doesn't work there.
Yeah, it doesn't run the numbers.
The money to balance those things out, even though they have 24 screens to fill. But what this current situation has done is created this hungry need for theaters, for multiplexes especially, to fill every single one of their screens with something. And there's been a giant boom as well with repertory film, repertory meaning classic film.
Yep.
Just not brand new film. Where we're seeing, what was it? Hocus Pocus was re-released in theaters.
That's a great example.
And had, it was the #2 film in the entire country.
Yeah.
Some, 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, Bette Midler was having a great day when that happened. When that number hit the corner for her, she's going, I've been revived, I'm from out of the grave.
Yep, exactly. But that's the thing, is like the things people want to see is the comfort stuff right now, if they can't see a brand new film. But this is like, these theaters just have to, we got to put something on the screen, and so they're working with the distributors who also are losing money. I mean, all these major distributors, their back catalogs have always been a source of income for them, for theaters like us, and also, some mainstream theaters do run into classic film every so often. It's usually a nationwide mandate by that corporation, with some theme that they're tying around.
Yeah.
But they're all taking a hit too, and that was why one thing, with the drive-in, like, that was such an exciting experience. Is distributors were so excited that their films could reach that audience, that kind of audience, this summer in that capacity. We had a really high capacity at our drive-in. There's 300 cars was the maximum that we could have, which is almost double for most drive-ins. I feel like most professional drive-ins.
I mean, even if you just take 2 people per car, Keith, that's 600 people. That's an amazing audience. That's an amazing audience.
Exactly, and these drive-in grosses around the country, which was another avenue that a lot of theaters took. Mostly independent theaters. Corporations never got into 2 things. Corporate theaters never got into drive-ins, and they never got into virtual cinema. Because
I'm going to ask you, that's a great place to pause, because we're going to pick up on that and add in what we talked about content and where is it coming from, because the big boxes have an attitude that is holding back the development of some really great things. You're listening to 360 Performance. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman, coach as they know me, every Friday at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, giving you insights about performance and performance issues that make you better, or at least kind of push a button in your mind about what could I do differently to get a different result and a better result for me. And we're pushing the envelope a little bit with that, talking about cinema and the nature of virtual with actual butts in seats with my guest today, Keith Garcia. He's the artistic director at the C Film Center. I'm glad that he's here with me today. And I also want to mention to everybody that this month is a Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There's a lot of things going on in the month of October. The next best thing for me and for Keith is the Denver Film Festival is going to be starting in about 2 weeks with a great array of films and feature films, documentaries, shorts, and insights from the producers, directors, and actors of those films in a virtual way. So stay tuned for more about that. We'll have the guest, the new CEO, James Mejia, will be joining us next week. And then after that, one of Keith's colleagues, Kevin Smith, that's involved in sales and promotion for the Denver Film Festival. He'll be talking to us as well about sponsorship and how to make this work, and what do sponsors expect from this cinematic experience that we're giving people virtually. So Keith, coming back to our topic about content and about the big box, I mean, the big box in many cases traditionally has control of content. In many cases they have perhaps even commissioned a film. They've bought into a film and a script, and they're making it for their own house and their own library. But with that being said, they're in a world of hurt. They're on the edge of the precipice. And are they wrapping their arms around virtual cinema? Well,
the virtual cinema as we're running it, no. As a theater share capacity on separate platforms, no. They're not. The corporate theaters are not running into this, nor are the major film distributors. What they are working on, and there are actually many films in production again. We're gonna 2021 is gonna have this gigantic bank of films that never got to be released in 2020, which is a plus. The films will be there to fill theaters once theaters can safely reopen again, and people are actually, because theaters can safely reopen. I should add that, but
limited capacity,
but also audience desire to go to a theater. Is the most important aspect. When theaters are able to open at full capacity and audiences feel that they are ready to see films again, there will be plenty of them. What really sucks is though it's just such an extended amount of time. Every day that a movie theater is not open is a film organization or a theater corporation going in the red a lot deeper.
Well, and the art houses are on the precipice, and to that point more often than not, even with good times. waiting for contributions, waiting for funding and grants to be awarded, any number of things. And I know with the C Film Center and the Denver Film Society, they do a great job of balancing that. And I compliment you for surviving the last 18 months, given all that's happened to the theatrical business and the cinema centers around the country. I mean, huge operations are going out of business. Not Chapter 11, not bankruptcy, shutting their doors. Regal is the most recent example for us here in Denver. So with that, that's kind of a dark thought. What's the optimism, Keith? What are you looking forward to that's optimistic for you and what you're doing?
I mean, the optimism comes from two ways. It's knowing that there will be films, knowing that there are films currently.
Yep.
And that we do have the ability to engage with those, and that I feel like we're making great strides in this virtual cinema domain. The film festival ultimately will be a major example of that, because what we're really hoping is that we get thousands of more people coming to our platform to experience these movies, and then once the festival's done, we're like, cool, you liked all those movies you saw? Keep watching. We're always going to curate and have fantastic film on our virtual cinema. You get to see how easy it was to play it at home, to have a well-rounded experience and have it be enjoyable, and support an organization that you love and that needs your support right now during this time. So there's optimism that we're still chugging along, that we're still going to have movies. There will be plenty next year when we're able to welcome audiences back again, and we've also expanded our ability to move into the future. That the big question mark always is, what does the future of film look like? And I feel like every year the statement that's made is the film industry is dying, the film industry is dying, theater industry is dying, and then it doesn't. We finally had something happen that was like out of anyone's control that no one thought about that would affect the film industry. And I think we're going to be able to look at it in perspective next year. The film industry wasn't dying, it just needed to adapt. And there will be aspects of virtual cinema, or whatever the major distributors end up attaching themselves to in the future, that will change the way that the movies, how long movies are shown in theaters before they hit a virtual platform, and other engagement like that. I mean, we've had Netflix for so long.
Yes.
That, I mean, that's the thing. I remember having the conversation back in 2009 when we were about to step into a new home at the C Film Center, when we were at Stars Film Center previously, where the notion of VOD and Netflix came up, and people were worried, and I was like, I don't think we should be worried. I think this just expands the notion that people want to watch movies. It's another way for them to do it. Yeah, is it a theater experience? No. But it can all work hand in hand. We have lived with Netflix for, over the last decade, Netflix having a major role in how people watch stuff.
And Keith, you bring a good point with Netflix, because that gave birth to Series Fest. They've been, they've had their 6th or 7th year, so that was shortly after that Series Fest was created. We have a great relationship with Series Fest, so now you've got the thought process of a episodic production could become a feature film, or vice versa. A feature film, because of Netflix, could become episodic. So it's this great new frontier of possibilities. And with that being said, I'm going to ask you about, there's this movement of table reads. These casts get together and do a table read of a historically old film, or the cast of Friends gets together and does a table read.
Yeah.
You think that will become a virtual topic, that the virtual table read becomes a topic in cinematography, that we'll actually film a table read and then virtually broadcast it to see what people think? Maybe it becomes the pitch deck of the future.
No, absolutely. And it's funny. I've been watching commercials for this TV show that premiered last night that I was home and well, we're all home,
Yeah.
able to catch. And I was very interested in it. It's a show called Connected, and it's a sitcom centered around friends Zooming,
Yep.
like doing a catch up. And I remember they've been running these commercials for probably about a month, so the production of it was probably about 2 months ago. And I was like, God, it's so interesting to see that that's the adaptation of, and it's not going to be all television. Television has come back.
Yeah.
Beloved TV shows are currently in production with brand new protocols and new situations where how you have to film everything, and we're probably going to see people not standing so close to each other in some cases in things.
Camera angles have gotten bigger.
Camera angles have gotten bigger and all that stuff, but that's all creative adaptation.
Yeah.
Of everything. But in regards to your question about table reads, that's what that show was essentially. Was one big table read.
Yeah. One
big cast reunion that, but just a little less reading a beloved story that people knew about. I mean, that's the table read idea. Cast reunion is an adaptation, and a lot of it too is out of necessity for. Wouldn't it be great to get these celebrities back and raise money for essential workers, or raise money for the restaurant industry, or raise money for these various industries that right now are falling apart. And through that aspect, I'm actually surprised that none of them have really been about the film industry, the movie theaters, in regards to raising money. That is a big thing on the table right now, is trying to get movie theaters under the eyeballs of Congress, as all these adaptations of sending money in different places.
Well, you gave me a great segue with that, Keith. Let me point out to our audience and to everybody out there interested in cinematography and helping those workers in the entertainment field survive, because many of them, as Keith pointed out, are not working because films aren't being produced, shows aren't being edited in the studios, or a television network, a cable network. As right here in our own town, Comcast is shutting down 5 physical studios, and so people are out of work. So take a look at the Will Rogers Foundation. They give money to entertainment folks that need food. They need gas money. They need bus fare to get to the next interview. The same thing with the Screen Actors Guild. 2 organizations. And by the way, you don't have to be a member of either of those foundations to get money from them. So go to the Screen Actors Guild. If you're in the entertainment field, you're a grip, you're a sound person, you're a PA, whatever you are, go check those places out, because they give away millions and millions of dollars to needy folks in the entertainment business that need support. And it's a mistake to think you have to be part of those guilds or those unions to be given consideration for funding and support. Check them out. So I'm glad you brought that up, Keith. That's an awesome comment. Know that we've got the Denver Film Festival starting up in about 2 weeks. It's October 23rd, Keith, is that?
22nd.
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 And going into November the 8th.
Yep.
And lots of great things happening. I'll be reporting. I'm going to do some news coverage of what's going on there. Like I said, I've got Jim Mejia joining us next week, the new CEO of the Denver Film Organization. And then following that, the next week after that, I'm going to have Kevin, 2 K words, Kevin Smith, who handles the promotions and sales sponsorships for the Denver Film Organization, will be with me as well, talking about sponsorship and answering the question, why would a sponsor support a virtual festival for film when they were used to, I get my popcorn, I get my drink, I sit in the seat, my feet stick to the floor, I'm having a great time. Why would they spend that money? And I'll give you a little clue. They're spending as much or more money than they have sponsored in the past for the 43rd Denver Film Festival this year in 2021. Keith, we're coming close to the end of our time together. I want to say before I forget it, and not that I would, thank you so much for taking time. I want everybody to know that Keith's a trooper. He's got time off. He's taking time off, but he's joining us in that space, probably taking time off to get ready for the festival, which is a drain, virtual or not. It's going to be a drain of people's time as staff. As you know, you're short staff at the C Film Center. By the way, are you guys going to have private rentals during the film festival or not?
Yes. I mean, that's one of the odd things we have to manipulate our mind space around at the moment. Is like normally every year I'd be blocking out the dates at the film festival and being like, sorry to all my friends and family, you're not going to see me for the duration of this festival because I will be at the film center introducing films, going to films, going to to events and all this stuff, and now all the work is being done at this very moment to put the films on the platform, and then once the festival starts, it starts. Yeah. And then we're sort of left mostly on a technical basis, making sure everything does sort of go off. If it does have a specific timing or something, just keep an eye on that stuff. But it's a much different experience for our staff. But that said, the theater is not being utilized for the Denver Film Festival. Therefore, it's totally available for private screenings during that time. So absolutely, if there's a film you want to watch, let us know, and we'll get you a private screening going of that movie.
Great time to hang out at the theater. DenverFilm.org for getting your tickets, your virtual tickets for films the next couple of weeks in advance to the film festival, and then know that you can rent that space for you and 9 others to share in a movie you choose from your own library. Or I suppose if you asked really nicely, maybe a film out of the C Film Library might be available to you as well. But connect to the website to ask those questions and sign up for the festival. Get your passes for the festival and those virtual tickets, as well as for the next couple of weeks, seeing some films at the virtually at the C Film Center. But Keith, I'm going to give you a challenge and our closing for today. I've picked 2 films from the film festival list of films I'm going to make sure I see, and they are Code Bias, and they are I Am Greta. We got the green space film with I Am Greta, that powerful young woman, and I've got my geek film I want to see because it concerns the daylights out of me that AI could be manipulating in a biased sort of way what we see, what we hear, how we feel, just because of a code and how they watch what we do on the internet. So Code Bias and I Am Greta are my 2 films. What are your 2 films?
There's a really great film called Women in Blue, which is a very timely documentary about the Minneapolis police force and the specific role of female cops and female cops of color. And the film is not as we look at currently, controversial to either be pro-cop or anti-cop. The film focuses on what role women play in changing the dynamics that we're currently really trying to figure out about policing in this country. And Minneapolis was a hot spot before George Floyd, and then obviously George Floyd in that case literally ignited that city. And we're lucky enough with that presentation to be the first in the country to see a new cut of the film that was re-edited because it was done before the George Floyd murder. Awesome. And when that happened, they went back and conducted more stories and more added it back into the bigger piece. So you're going to watch the complete, taking us all the way up to today.
What's your second film, Keith?
Second film, oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have an announcement on Monday, so I can't say what the film is, but it will be part of this announcement. But But just be on the lookout for a very special announcement about a set of films that will be in the festival this year.
So there's a reason to go to denverfilm.org and check out that announcement for some special film releases on Monday. You'll find about that. So once again, Keith, thank you so much. We've ended our hour for today. I'll be back with you next Friday, every Friday at 11 a.m. on 360 Performance. See you. Have a great day, everybody. I'm Coach. Have a